How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a video on 5 used fast cars that you can buy that absolutely dominate on track days. Now, it's no secret that I absolutely love driving cars on track, but my budget is currently relatively low. However, in the future, there's a whole bunch of cars that I would love to buy that are sort of below the £75,000 range that I think make for perfect track day weapons. Now, yes, that is quite expensive, and if you'd like to see me go any lower on the price range, do hit the like button. 1,000 likes and I will try going at under 50 or maybe under 20 or maybe even under £10,000. Don't forget that I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ, and don't forget that whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that kind of stuff is important to remember. If you haven't already, do hit subscribe, I'd really appreciate it, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's get it started with the 996 Porsche 911 GT3, which is a 3.6 litre flat 6 engine, putting out 381 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 4.4 seconds. The idea behind the GT3 is that it's a homologation model for race cars, dating all the way back to 1973 with the Carrera RS. You'll probably have seen that GT3s across many generations have taken part in many different sports car championships, including their own Porsche-specific championships. But the 996 GT3 was the first Porsche to officially received the GT3 nameplate, and it dropped in 1999 alongside the rest of the fried egg headlighted 911s. These 996 GT3s were entered into the FIA GT3 Cup, and the road going example was about as bare bones as it gets to provide owners with what is basically a track car with some indicators bolted on. It even had an engine based on the one used in the 911 GT1 race car, and also gained larger brakes, more track focused suspension, and the body kit with a large wing that worked together to actually increase downforce, so it's not all for show. Anything that adds additional weight was removed, like the sound deadening, rear speakers, the sunroof, air conditioning, and the rear seats. That said, some of these were available as optional extras, so if you're in the market for one, do check the spec. The wheels were also replaced with lighter ones to decrease unsprung mass, and if you're really focused on going around a track, you could get a Club Sport package which gave the car bucket seats, a half roll cage, racing harnesses, and a bunch of other racing features on the interior. Also worth noting that if you got a facelifted example from 2004 onwards, you could spec Porsche carbon ceramic brakes. It's also done a 7-minute 54-second lap time at the Nürburgring, faster than many supercars of its era. £70,000 is the minimum that you'll find these listed for, and as I mentioned, they are very much reaching classic status at this point. For this kind of money, you'll get a 2004 example with around 30,000 miles on the clock. On reliability, specialists note these engines are strong, but will see big and small end wear when used and abused on track over extended ownerships. The post-facelift gearboxes are also known to be stronger and more reliable, and these cars are normally good on rust, but worth checking the undersides as they weren't given underbody wax from factory. Next up is another Porsche, this time the more recent 981 Cayman GT4, one of my personal favourites. It has a 3.8 litre flat 6 engine, putting out 379 brake horsepower, which gets from 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, so only marginally quicker than the 911. Even though the Cayman sits below the 911 in the Porsche lineup, things generally get better in time, when the GT4 has managed a Nürburgring lap time of 7 minutes and 40 seconds, beating the 996 GT3 by 14 seconds. You can tell it's more modern with some of the insane features it benefits from, like the LSD with Porsche torque vectoring, Porsche active suspension management, and even an ECU with the Club Sport package that enables the car to provide telemetry data to drivers so they can analyse their laps. If that's not track focused enough for you, then don't forget that in Club Sport you also gain a half roll cage like in the GT3, along with 6-point harnesses and compatibility with the hands device to stop you from claiming on whiplash in a crash. This is literally a cup car for the roads at this point. You'll also gain a bunch of parts off the 991 GT3, like the brakes and dampers, as well as a lower ride height overall and increased rigidity throughout the car to benefit the handling. On the exterior, you'll also see a huge rear wing with a lower lip spoiler too, which provides plenty of downforce, and the front bumper has been redesigned to provide better cooling to the radiator, which will be especially useful when hammering it around a track in hot weather. This is a proper track driver's car, and though it certainly has presence enough to be a nice road car, its real allure comes from how well it handles on track. These are listed for a minimum of around £67,000, and at 75 grand you'll be looking at a 2015 model with around 10,000 miles on the clock. Owners have been very positive about the reliability of these cars, noting that other than excessive tyre and brake consumption, they trust these cars to be able to go to a track day, bosh it around for the day and drive home with no issues. Some have had issues with knocks from suspension, but this has generally been caused by extensive hard use. In third we have my favourite car on this list, the Lotus Exige Sport 350, which is a Toyota sourced 3.5 litre supercharged V6, putting out 345 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I really like the Exige Cup 430, which is absolutely one of my personal dream cars. The Sport 350 is like a slightly less savage example, but it's still an absolute weapon on track and an incredibly cool car to be driving on the roads regardless. It replaced the Exige S during its most recent run of the third generation of Exiges, and of course, as a Lotus, it had to be lighter and faster, though the engine remained the same in terms of power output. Originally, Lotus were going to throw the 400 brake horsepower block in from the Evora, but they couldn't keep the weight of the car down if they did this, so instead of adding power, Lotus focused on modifying the chassis to make the ultimate package from a handling perspective, and as I mentioned, stripping out anything unnecessary to make it as light as possible. You'll very much see this on the interior, with the exposed gear linkages, exposed metal, and generally bare bones feel. It definitely embodies the Lotus mantra of simplify, then add lightness. It weighs 51 kilograms less than the S, and just 1,125 kilograms in total, which is ridiculous. On track, this formula leads to an insane driving experience, and you'll likely see one or two if you attend a track day, as this is what they were designed to do. Claims are made that it will run a 7-minute 50 lap around the ring, but I can't find anywhere to confirm this. Its predecessor, the S, ran a 7:53, so it's certainly not impossible. You'll be able to find these listed from around £57,000 at the bottom end, which is actually the base cash price of the car new, and top spec, almost new examples are available from around £70,000. Owners do complain that spares and replacement parts are quite expensive on these cars, so something to be wary of when buying. In terms of the engine though, that Toyota block is renowned for its reliability. Lotus did a great job switching from the nightmare engines in the early 2000s to the Toyota source stuff, as it's really done them well in an attempt to negate lots of trouble, usually serious. So I hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, do hit the like button, I would really appreciate it, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button as we're trying to get that 100k this year. In second we have a car specifically built for performance with no mind paid to practicality, the Ariel Atom, which has a Civic Type R source 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, putting out 320 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in just 3 seconds, or at least in the most recent generation Atom 4. I have made so many list videos at this point, and yet somehow I still haven't managed to shoehorn the Ariel Atom into them. Well, finally, here one is, and if you've ever been to a track day or an experience day, you'll likely have been overtaken numerous times by one of these monsters. Unlike all the other cars on this list, I'd probably prefer to tow this one to a track day, as it has no windscreen unless spec'd, no sides, no nothing. Just a frame, suspension, 2 seats, a steering wheel, and a beast of an engine, with some exceptional engineering to make it turn corners at mind-boggling speeds. There are 8 Atom generations, and the 4 is the most recent. Each of them has slight tweaks and upgrades over the former, but the formula is generally quite similar. It originated as a university project by a student at Coventry before he and his lecturer turned it into a track beast that we see today, with help from British Steel, TWR and Lotus, who tuned the suspension in such a way that reviewers mention how similar the car feels to a Lotus. For a brief time, these even had their own race series, and they only needed a few modifications to be considered as race cars. I would say of all the cars on this list, if going fast is what you care about, get one of these, as there are literally 2 in the top 15 cars to ever go around the Top Gear test track, beating cars like the Veyron Supersport, 991 GT3 RS, Koenigsegg CCX, and a whole bunch of other beasts. These are very hard to get a hold of, and the cheapest I could find them listed for used is £50,000, which is 10k more than the entry level price of the car when new. Think less about the reliability of these and think more about what you're buying into. There aren't many Atoms, so if you plan to buy one, call the company and tell them which one you're looking at, and they'll give you all the details about it and whether they reckon it's a good buy. It's hard as an owner to lie about these, as the company will literally just tell you everything you need to know. Taking the top spot in this video is the Nissan GT-R, specifically in track edition spec, with its 3.8 litre twin turbocharged V6, putting out 542 brake horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 2.6 seconds, which is absolutely ridiculous. At those kinds of figures, this is basically a supercar with 4 seats. You'll likely already know about the Nissan GTR as a petrol head, but the track edition turns it up a notch as it's engineered by Nismo. It's not quite on a level with the Nismo GTR, but it's somewhere in that direction. For your reference, where a normal GTR would be about 78 grand new, this was 88 grand, while a Nismo is around 125 grand. You'll still benefit from the Nismo suspension modifications, which is basically a 3-stage adjustable set of Bilstein dampers and modified anti-roll bars that are stiffer and lighter, as well as lighter wheels to further decrease unsprung mass. You also get some of the stiffening work that Nismo do to their cars, though you won't gain the additional aero that Nismo provides, but the additional rigidity will help when cornering either way. For those of you that want to maintain some usability in the car as well, you keep the same interior as the standard GTR, and the ride quality is definitely stiffer, but not so bad that you'd suffer on long journeys like you might in something more stripped out. The one thing owners and reviewers say about this car is that on track it's really easy to drive fast and inspires a lot of confidence. Even bad technique is accounted for by how easy the car is to drive. That's not to say that you'll never crash it, and owners do note that you can be doing scary speeds very quickly as a result of that acceleration. The lowest price I could find these listed for is around £57,000, and you'll get more recent examples for around £75,000. Reliability on these is pretty good, as the engine is capable of up to around 750 brake horsepower before you need to do any internal strengthening, so it's running well under capacity. However, maintenance is expensive according to both specialists and owners, so be aware going into the purchase. Chain stretching is the main scary problem I could find, and it's a 2k engine out fix. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, and don't forget to subscribe, obviously. Massive thank you to the patrons as always for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.